I will go ahead and get started. As I said, thank you for coming here today. I am the Chief Operating Officer, Heather, with PedNet. I have been with PedNet for just over 4 years, and I went through training to become a League of American Bicyclists certified bicycling instructor. And so I've got a bit of experience with bicycle laws and best practices. And so, I mean, I personally have noticed in the last couple of years an increase of people commuting by bike, at least where I live in the first ward. I live over off West Boulevard. And so we like to every once in a while just give a talk about the laws and best practices of cycling, just to make sure that everybody knows. All right. So one thing, you know, it's important to learn about the bicycle laws. John? Oh, it's important to learn about the bicycle laws because these laws aren't always intuitive, and even the rules, they might not make sense until they're explained to you. And so, you know, people, even if you're not going to ride a bicycle, it's really important to learn about the bicycle laws so that you understand how bicycles that are sharing the transportation system with you are, you know, how they're going to act so that you can predict them. So many people on bikes who walk and who are driving are not at all aware of the laws. And several commonly held beliefs about bicycle laws are incorrect. And then, as I was saying a few minutes ago, we're seeing more and more people using bikes as transportation. And so we just know it's really important to address these. All right. So the best advice is that people on bikes fare best when they act and are treated as if they are drivers of a vehicle. And so anytime that someone comes up to me and it's like, I'm not sure how I should ride my bike, you know, on the street. If I only have just a minute to explain to them, I just tell them, act like you're in a car, do everything the same way that you would if you were driving a car. And so legally, you are considered to be in a vehicle. And so that means that you have the same rights and responsibilities while on your bike that you have while driving a car. And you've got the right to ride. You can ride on any road at any time, except those specifically marked otherwise, such as the travel lane on interstate and other situations such as that. But a person riding the bike can ride on major arterials, large highways, and under any weather condition. So even on I-70, I know that someone who used to commute on I-70, just a small stretch of it, and you just have to ride on the shoulder. And of course, that's not comfortable, but it is allowed. And so you can ride on any speed of road that you feel comfortable, any number of lanes. What's most important is where you ride within the lane. So you are supposed to ride as far as near to the right side of the roadway is considered safe. So that's generally about 3 feet, although you're allowed to use the whole lane. And even if there's a bike lane available, you are not required to use the bike lane. There's a lot of reasons why. We've got some pictures here that are examples of reasons you might not want to use the bike lane. If there's gravel, if there's slick spots, if there's broken glass, those grates that nobody really likes to ride over. But even for no reason, you're able to ride on any part of the lane. And this is one of the issues that I have seen most commonly, I would say, is people riding against traffic. But because you're considered a vehicle, you are required to ride with traffic when you're on your bicycle. it might be because people start off walking, and whenever you're walking, you're encouraged to actually walk against traffic. But for bicycling, it's not the same. It is illegal, and also it is dangerous. And so this image gives you an idea as to why that is. The driver of the white vehicle, they know to look to the left to see if there's traffic coming, but they're not going to look to the right necessarily. And so the chances of getting hit if you are this red bicyclist are greatly increased. And so one thing we always tell anyone using transportation outside of a vehicle is that you should be predictable. Whenever you're riding your bicycle, you want to be doing things that people will be able to predict that you're going to do. So you want to go with traffic instead of like popping out. And so there's this really cool picture of this gentleman who is riding the wrong way, and the guy in the old car is probably going to hit him. But he's got those really cool shades on. So, I mean, I guess if anybody's going to hit you. All right. Another thing that is really common for new commuters by bike is riding on sidewalks. And it's not illegal in most places to ride on the sidewalk on your bike, but we are strongly against that, except for with children. It is illegal downtown, and you'll see these signs that say that you have to walk the bicycle. But in general, it's not illegal. It's just that roads are known to be safer unless there's just a section of road that you feel completely unsafe, or if you have younger riders or other vulnerable riders with you. And anyone who's walking will have the right of way on the sidewalk. So if you're riding your bike on a section of sidewalk and someone is walking by, you have to make sure that they are given the space that they need.
Can you get a ticket for riding on a sidewalk?
You can if you do it in an area that it's marked that you're not allowed to ride on the sidewalk. So downtown in Columbia, you could get a ticket.
I got one.
Oh, you did? Okay.
$75.
And you're also not technically supposed to ride the bird scooters on the sidewalk downtown, and that's something that I've seen a lot. They should be ridden in the road as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So fun thing about Columbia is that it is legal to park in the bike lane. And I mean, this isn't common with most cities. It was part of the negotiation process to be able to get bike lanes put in. People were fearful of losing their parking. But as I said, I live on West Boulevard, and I rarely even use the bike lanes on West Boulevard, at least over on the section that I live over by Worley. There's just always cars parked in it. And so they are legally allowed to do that in Columbia. And that's something that we would, like to see happen differently. So the reason that I was just saying that I kind of stay out of the bike lane on West Boulevard is, once again, coming back to being predictable. And so you see the picture on the left, it shows you just because those cars are parked, you just go past them both. And on the right, he kind of weaves in there. And I've done that before, but it's whenever you come back out, you have to worry about whether or not that vehicle sees you. And so just keeping your line is going to be a lot safer with parked cars. All right. A lot of new riders feel really uncomfortable taking up the entire lane, or taking the lane as we call it. They feel like they have to stay as far to the right as possible, almost like apologetic to people that are driving cars on the road for slowing them down or whatever. But whenever it comes to narrow lanes, you are going to be safest if you go to the middle of the lane or just right of the middle of the lane and take the lane. Let me see. And that is because whenever you take the middle of the lane, like this cartoon person down here on the bottom, that forces the vehicles, the people that are driving vehicles on the road with you, that forces them to move into another lane in order to pass you, which is how, if there are multiple lanes, that's how they should pass you. And so on this example, you see the same cartoon gentleman down on the bottom. And if you ride as far to the right as you can, cars will try to squeeze past you. This just happens all the time. And then you end up where you're unable to wobble. You need a little bit of wobble space in case you need to dodge some glass or grate or whatever else happens. My example, I had a dog run out in front of me on Paris Road. You need to be able to maneuver. And so this gentleman on the bottom just doesn't have the space to do that. Even if you are riding on a road that has a bike lane, whenever you come up to an intersection, you should always take the lane. And that is because you're much easier to see if you take the entire lane than you are if you look at the first example on here. One, this car, even if you were there first, the person driving this car might go straight forward and it could cause a collision with you. But for two, it'll make anyone who's coming from the left side of this vehicle have a more difficult time to see you. You want to be very clearly positioned, especially any intersections. Intersections are some of the most common places for crashes to happen. And so whether you're going straight or to the right or to the left, you should take the lane. So there's the examples on here, and the one on the far right is if there is a left turning lane, then you should go all the way to the left turning lane to take your left. So here's an example. Whenever you come up to the stop sign, you just pull to the middle instead of staying to the right. And most bike lanes will end before you get to the intersection anyway, and that's kind of a heads up to get to the middle. But there are a couple in town that the bike lane goes all the way up to the stop sign. And in those situations, you should just leave the bike lane and go to the center. All right. For stopping in Missouri, you are required to cease all forward motion. And so that means that you do not necessarily have to put your foot on the ground in order to be considered stopping. You see people who are really good at like balancing on their bikes without having to move forward at all, and that's completely legal. In Missouri, we are required to stop at all stop signs, to stop at all red lights, to follow all traffic signals. There are some states that have exceptions to that, like Arkansas, for example, where if a person on a bike comes up to a stop sign and there's nobody else there, they're not required to stop. But that's not something that we have in Missouri right now. We do have the dead red law, which says that if you come up to a light and it's red and you wait, the law is written in an interesting time, or an interesting phrasing. It says that a reasonable amount of time. So if you wait long enough that you feel like it should have gone through a cycle of the light and nothing happens, and you look to make sure that you're not going to be crossing traffic, there's no vehicles around, then you can go ahead and go. That's just because Some places, the sensors won't necessarily notice you on a bicycle. And as well as taking the lane whenever you come up to stops, it's also important that you don't just move to the right in order to pass the vehicles that are in a line. This is a really common thing that people do because we're so used to riding on the, far right side of the road that you see a line of cars, and it just seems kind of natural. This is something I used to do before I commuted regularly, but it puts you in the crunch zone. So the chances of this Durango or taking a right up the intersection and accidentally crashing into you is, it's just a lot more likely. And so they can't necessarily see you. They don't know to look for you there. So it's best just to pull to the middle of the line and or middle of the lane and just get in line. On your bike, you have to obey all traffic signs. So just because you're on your bicycle doesn't mean you're allowed to make a turn that people driving cars would not be able to make. The exception to that is that you can get off of your bike and become a pedestrian by just pushing your bike alongside you. So an example is whenever we ride up to City Hall, we will often get off of our bikes to go into the crosswalk to make that left, because it's kind of a difficult left to make off of Broadway. So you can do that. And that's another thing that we recommend if you are on a section of road that you don't feel safe riding and you feel like you need to use the sidewalk for just a stretch, that you can also get off of it and become a pedestrian and push it along for the block or however long you feel like you need to ride on the sidewalk. Okay, lights. You are required by law to have a headlamp that is visible 300 feet from the front and the sides. On the back, you're required to have a reflector that's visible 500 feet behind. I'm a big fan of the flashing lights on the back, and that's what most of the people that I know use especially commuting at nighttime. But as far as the law is required, you just need the reflector. You're also supposed to have the side reflectors on your wheel. And then also pedal reflectors, which are either on the pedal, or some people have special shoes that have that. There's also like some pants that have reflectors on the inside, other creative things. But this is the bare minimum that you're required to have. And that is from 1/2 hour after sunset to 1/2 hour before sunrise. So yeah, it's just safer this way, and that's the requirement. And this kind of shows you the reason why, because people think, I have a reflector, why would I necessarily need a headlight? There's lights on the street, I can see where I'm going. But in this example, you see that bicyclist A has the headlamp, and so their light will cross paths with where the person driving this vehicle is looking and where they can see. Whereas the person, bicyclist B, they just have reflectors. Well, because no light is shining on them from the vehicle, they're invisible. They're invisible until they're already into the path, essentially, of the vehicle. And so having that headlight just makes you a lot more visible. In Colombia, we are not required to wear helmets if you're an adult. But for folks 15 years of age or younger, you are required to wear a helmet. If you're going to wear a helmet, it's really important to wear it the right way, because otherwise it's pointless. This picture obviously makes a joke of it. I don't think I've seen anybody try to hook their helmet on through their mouth. But, other than that, you just have to make sure that you get the right fit for your helmet and that you wear it level on your head, that you adjust the straps to where they make a V right underneath your ear, and they're snug, but they're not too tight, so you're able to move your head a bit. So here's a picture of this lady showing us how to wear helmet properly. So you want it to be 2 fingers above your eye, and that's pretty much just keeping your helmet level. And then a little bit of finger space between your chin. Signaling. Signaling is not required, but highly recommended, because once again, this is another way to be predictable to people who are driving cars, to let them know where it is that you're going. Of course, if you're in an unsafe or unsteady position, you don't need to take your hand off of your bicycle in order to signal. You want to do whatever is safest in that moment. And also, you don't need to continuously signal. You can just, point, stick your hand out briefly, as long as you just want people to be able to see you. All right, and so signaling left turn, you just point to the left. Signaling a right turn, we point to the right. This, was the traditional way, the old way, but it's not really necessary, especially when you're not in a vehicle. That's more of you want to take a right turn, but you're in a vehicle, and no one would be able to see your arm out to the right. So we generally encourage people just to point and have their arm out. Otherwise, sometimes people think you're waving at them. So it's just more clear. I usually point where I'm going. And then stopping, you put your arm down. And in group rides, communication is really important. And so if people are riding closely together, you would not only want to put your arm down, but you would also want to use verbal communication if you can, and tell people that you're stopping. In Colombia, it is a Class A misdemeanor to harass someone who's riding a bike, walking, or using a wheelchair, whether that means throwing objects at them, honking the horn, shouting at them, trying to intimidate them in any way. That is illegal here in Colombia. Side-by-side riding, we believe that side-by-side riding is one of the safer ways to ride if you're in a group of people. And it's considered to be the best practice whenever you're riding in a group. And it's completely legal when you're not impeding other vehicles. And so because you're entitled to use any part of the lane while you're riding your bicycle, it doesn't matter that you have 2 lines of bicycles, because they're still legally within the usable part of the lane. As long as you stay to the right side of the center line, that's all you have to do. So side-by-side bicycles are essentially the same width as the width of a car. And so riding in that fashion will ensure that drivers pass the group as if it were a slow moving vehicle. So they would, instead of trying to pass within one lane, they would move over into the other lane. This is also really helpful because if you're on a two-way traffic road and there's someone driving a car who wants to pass you, it's half of the passing distance if you're, doubled up than it would be if you're a straight row of bikes. There it is. Yeah. And it also makes you more visible. You cannot get a DUI or a DWI while you're on your bicycle because it is not motorized. And there's some other considerations like with CCs or something, but we do know that you cannot get charged with that while you're on your bicycle, but you can be charged with reckless driving or public intoxication, and which, are still serious, but not quite. So we're obviously not big proponents of biking around and drinking a bunch. But, if you're going around downtown, like for an event called Bikes and Brews or something, and just having like small samples of beer, it's fine. You don't have to worry about getting a DUI or a DWI. So blocking traffic on your bicycle, as long as you are riding or operating at or near your maximum speed, you cannot be fined for impeding traffic while you're on your bicycle. And so as long as you're not just going out into the road and stopping and like intentionally trying to block traffic, there's no reason that you should worry about getting a ticket. And I've experienced it where people will be driving by and, say something about blocking traffic because we're moving at a slower speed, but there's no legality behind that. You are allowed to ride your bike on the street, even if you only ride 5 miles an hour. If that's the speed that you can ride, then that's just fine. Trails and paths. It is important to ride to the right and pass on the left, just like you would you were driving a car on the highway. It's just the best way to keep traffic moving along. It's really important to yield to oncoming trail users. So, all the different paths that come onto the MKT, you just should watch and make sure that anyone who's coming on the trail you're not going to collide with them. And people who are walking have the right of way on the trail. And I've heard people before say that, people riding bikes on the trail are similar to people driving cars on the road, in the sense that, they're on a bike and going really quick and can make people walking feel uncomfortable. And so it's just really important whenever people are walking that you give them plenty of space and plenty of warning whenever you're going to pass them, and just try to make it a comfortable experience for everybody. And it's also important that you don't block the trail. So if you need to, do an adjustment on your bicycle.
What's the speed that you can go on the trail?
On the MKT, it's 15 miles an hour.
Okay.
And there aren't really people out there enforcing it. It's more you know, expecting people to just follow the rule because it's set, and most people do. Most people stick to the 15 miles an hour until they get outside of Columbia or up to the Katy Trail.
And what do you, I've had this happen with me too. What do you do if you are ringing your bell and they're walking two abreast, but you still can't get by because they're wearing headphones?
What I always do in that situation is I'll try a different type of communication. So instead of ringing my bell, I'll say like, good morning, or I'm passing on your left. I just make as many attempts as I can, ride safely around them a bit slower than I would have if I knew that they could hear me. And yeah, just as far to the left as I can safely pass them. So I try to give them as much space as possible, and yeah, just warn them in different ways, because that's, you know, a lot of people wear headphones, but it's still important to try to let them know that you're passing.
Okay.
And if you have to, like if there are people walking all the way across the trail, like blocking the whole thing, walking, and no one can hear you, you can always hop off your bike and push it past them and then get back on it. Anything to avoid accidentally crashing into them.
Okay.
Thanks for asking. All right, bike fit. This is another thing that is a common issue with new riders, is they don't always understand what size their bicycle should be. And so if you have a properly fit bicycle, whenever you sit on the seat and have the ball of your foot on the pedal, you should have a slight bend to your knee. So as you see here, it's not a dramatic bend, it's a slight bend. And then whenever you're on the up, because that's when you're in the down position of the pedal, and whenever you're on the up position of the pedal, your thighs should be about level. And the best way to make sure that you have the proper bike fit is to go to one of the bike shops. They have the capability to set you up on a bike and see, you know, how you're positioned. They can help you if your saddle needs to be in a different position, or your seat, with any of that.
What's it with? I was always wondering this, because sometimes I have a speaker I put on my bike and listen to music or listen to the podcast or news. So how loud am I allowed to have it when I'm on the trail?
As far as I know, there's not a ordinance that controls how loud you're allowed to be. I know that with people who are driving cars, there is a specific amount of volume, but I don't think it's anything you would be able to move, you know, to be louder than on a Bluetooth speaker. Yeah, as far as I've ever heard, there aren't any laws that dictate that. I'm sure that if you were disturbing people, then that might be different. But yeah, I've never heard of anything being enforced like that. And I mean, I've been on bike rides up and down the trail where everybody's blasting music and stuff, so should be fine. For me, it's just really important that I can hear the traffic around me. As long as you can hear if someone's trying to pass you, as long as it's not distracting you, that's what I would say is best. Oh, that's not supposed to happen. Okay. Oh.
Determining the correct saddle height
Never mind,
is
this
an
is
essential
supposed to happen.
element in proper bike fit. A saddle height that is too low does not allow you to fully extend your knees and transfer all of your leg power to the pedals. A saddle height that is too high makes you overextend your legs and makes your hips rock. You only need two simple tools to determine the appropriate saddle height, an angle ruler and a plumb bob. To get started, put your cycling shoes on and run a piece of masking tape along the instep of your foot, marking it in line with the middle of your cleat. Warm up for 15 minutes in order to be sure that you're settled comfortably in your saddle and determine your natural foot position during your pedal stroke. Stop pedaling at the bottom of your pedal stroke when your crank arm is in line with the seat tube. As a general rule, you'll want the angle to read 30 degrees for proper seat height. Once you achieve proper seat height, you'll want to adjust the saddle forwards or backwards to fine-tune the fit. To do this, pedal for a few minutes until you're settled properly into the seat. Then stop with your foot in its natural position with the crank arms level to the ground. Place the plumb bob line at the front of your knee and see if it lines up with the middle mark on the instep of your shoe. Adjust your saddle forwards or backwards according to the plumb bob results. After achieving proper saddle height, make a note of it by measuring the distance between the top of your saddle and the center of the bottom bracket along the seat tube. You can also mark your seat post and saddle rails for future reference. If you have any further questions about proper bike fit or saddle height, don't hesitate to call in and chat with an expert at competitivecyclist.com.
Cool.
How do you do that
Alright.
with, how do you do that with, how do you do that if you don't wear cycling shoes? Why don't you just wear regular shoes?
You can do it with regular shoes. You would just put the tape on the inside in the same position of your regular shoe, and then you just make sure that you are careful about your foot position, and that whenever you're trying to make sure that you're at the right height, that you've got your ball of your foot on the pedal.
What's it when you're riding home at night? 'Cause I ride home a lot at night, work at night.
Mhm.
Does it matter what, if you got bright lights on your bike, does it matter what color clothes you have on, or do you have to wear bright clothes so they can see you?
You are not required by law to wear bright clothing. You are not required by law to have any other kind of reflective clothing on. My recommendation is just to do what makes you feel comfortable. I know that, as I said, I'm really big on the flashing light on the back. And then my headlamp that's got, really good distance. And so I feel comfortable with just that.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just dependent upon what you feel comfortable in.
Okay.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Let me stop sharing.
I know I don't have a flashing light on my back of my bike. My light's solid because I have a pedal. Mine light goes on by pedal power. And mine doesn't flash.
And it doesn't have to be flashing. I mean, as long as people behind you can see it, it's still better than the alternative, better than just having a reflector, which is the only requirement.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for your questions, John. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I think that's it. Is that it, Gabby? Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We will keep having these conversations going forward, and the next one will be Ron Bench with MRT talking about the Rock Island Trail. We've also got some important advocacy stuff going on right now with the park sales tax, which is going to vote on Monday at City Council. You can find out more information about that on our website. It's pednet.org. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to myself or any of my colleagues. And thank you so much.
Do they know what time at at the city council next week will be, what time it will be at?
We're having an event ahead of time, ahead of that meeting. We are going to be at Vibes, which is a location downtown, and we're going to have food and beverages, and that will be at 5:30, and then city council starts at 7.
Okay,
Yeah. All
I'll
right.
try and make it because I don't know what time I'm gonna work on Monday yet, because I don't know if I'm gonna work 4 to 9 or if I'm gonna work in the morning.
Okay. Yeah, if you need any help finding the location that we're going to be at, just let me know, and we can.
Is there a way to send a message if I'm not there? If I have to work, is there a way to send a message that I approve for it? And I'm not gonna be at the meeting?
We have on our website and on some emails we've been sending out, we've got a way to email city council and to tell them your perspective on it. And we are encouraging people right now to send those emails in.
Okay.
Yeah, so that we've
Mhm.
got that on our website and also on our social media.
Okay.
And if you can't find it, you can always reach out to me, John.
Okay,
All
'cause I've
right.
already sent my email in, so that's all I need to do.
Great, yeah, that you've done, you've done it. If
Okay.
you know of any businesses that you think would be in support of it and you want to ask them, then I mean, that would be helpful, but that's about
Okay,
it.
okay. All right,
All right, bye,
thank
y'all.
you.
Good job, Heather.
Bye.
See ya.